Want to learn about cloud auto-scaling groups and load balancing? Hey, don't worry, I got you covered. In today's video, we're going to be doing another AWS lab walkthrough. Hey everybody, what's good? What's going on? JB here, back with another CyberInsight video. Today we're going to be doing another AWS lab in preparation for me taking my AWS SysOps Admin Associate exam. This lab is also going to be applicable if you're doing the Certified Solutions Architect exam as well. So hopefully it'll be beneficial to you. We're going to be doing a few different things. We're going to be creating or spinning up a load balancer. We're going to be doing some auto scaling groups that are going to be able to kick off different EC2 instances based off of a launch profile. And we're going to have some health checks to make sure that all the different instances in that auto scaling group are up and functioning. So I'm going to hop over into the browser as always. Make sure you smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, share the video with all your friends, all that other good stuff. So let's move over here and take a look. All right, so application load balancer, auto scaling group, launch template. Those are the main components of what we're going to be covering today. We're going to have the application load balancer to make sure that we're able to route traffic into the desired region. The application load balancer is going to be configured with some health checks. We're going to do some security group stuff. We're going to create a target group, which is going to have the specific instances in them. We're going to be doing an auto-scaling group using a launch template. So we're going to make sure that whatever the particular instances of those EC2 servers are well-defined, and then that launch template will make sure that whenever a new one needs to be spun up, it's able to do that. And then once we have those particular instances provisioned by the ASG, we're going to make sure that we register those instances with the application load balancing target group. So a few different things. We're going to see how they all kind of come together. Should be kind of fun. So if you have any questions or comments, throw those down below and we'll hit those up whenever I see them. So first thing that we're going to do, looking kind of at what we have going on here. So we have the console home. This is where we're going to be doing stuff. But also I always have some different AWS documentation. I'm going to put these in the video description so you can use these if you need to get a little bit more in-depth steps as far as what it is that we need to do to be doing different things. So we're kind of looking at load balancers and target groups, and we'll be hitting up a few other things that kind of go along with those as well. So first thing we're going to do from the console home is go load balancer. And we're going to go EC2 feature load balancer. There we go. And we're going to want to go and click on create a load balancer. Now we have a few different types that we can choose from here: application load balancer, network load balancer, gateway load balancer. And they all kind of have different purposes. In this case, really we're dealing with what in essence would be something hosting a web service using HTTP and HTTPS. So we're going to use the application load balancer. If we were doing some other type of stuff, maybe dealing with non-HTTP traffic or HTTPS traffic, we might look at the network load balancer. I haven't really done too much with this gateway load balancer, and then we also have the classic load balancer, which as you see here will be retiring August 15th, so we really wouldn't want to end up using that. There's different things as far as the restrictions that go along with those, so that'd be worth digging into a little bit. But just from a high-level perspective, if we're doing stuff dealing with web, we're probably going to be using the application load balancer. So we're going to go ahead and hit create. Call this CyberInsight LB. And hyphens are allowed, so we're good with that. Okay. It's going to be internet facing. You could do internal. So if you needed to make sure that traffic was being able to be load balanced across different instances internally, so you had like one server that was sending stuff and it needed to go to a whole bunch of other servers, then you could do an internal one. We're going to do an internet facing one. And in this case, we're just going to be using IPv4. All right, so as far as network mappings, we're going to do VPC. I have a few different ones we can choose from, but these are kind of already set up for other testing scenarios. So we're just going to go with my default VPC here. And we're going to map it to 2 different availability zones. I mean, we want to have some type of redundancy here. So we're just going to go US East 1. We can use that subnet, and US East 2. And we can use that subnet. As you see, so I've actually gone through and kind of changed the names of all of my default stuff. That just makes it a little bit easier for me when I'm going through to understand what stuff is correlated with which VPCs. So if you're doing this straight from scratch, you might not actually see stuff labeled this way. But I definitely recommend going and changing names and tags on things to make it so it makes more sense in your environment. So we'll use those 2. All right, so then down here to security groups, we actually will configure a new one for this particular test. All right, so let's go ahead and set up the security group. We're going to go CyberInsight LBSG, allow traffic to LB. This is the VPC we're attaching. Inbound rule. We're going to go HTTP, source from anything, allow HTTP traffic to LB. Okay, that should be good. And we can rename this HTTP to LB. Just so when we look at that, that makes sense. Okay. Now if we go back to the load balancer, should be able to refresh that. CyberInsight LBSG. There we go. Okay, and now for the listener. So listener is what checks for connection requests. It's what's actually running on the load balancer and is expecting traffic to come in on a particular port. So in this case, it's going to be port 80. We have an old target group here. I might create a new one just for this lab. So let's go create new target group. So we have a few different options here. We can go based off of instances. We could do IP addresses, Lambda functions, or application load balancers. So this one would be offering the flexibility for a network load balancer to accept and route traffic within this. So this facilitates using a static IP address and private link with another application load balancer. In this case, we're just going to be using instances. So once we end up having those EC2 instances created, then it will just link back to those particular names. So go CyberInsight LB TG. And the protocol that we'll be using is HTTP. VPC, we're keeping it to that. Protocol version, we're going to keep it to HTTP version 1. So that will allow both that and 2. So health check is going to be a very important aspect of this, and this is going to be what the load balancer is going to send traffic to on the particular instances to make sure that they're still there and available. If it fails this health check, then it will end up taking that particular instance out of the available pool and won't send customer traffic to it. So we can go index.php should be something that will just be running on these instances, and we should be good with that. Here we have some different thresholds. We can change this if we want to. And then also what particular type of success code we're looking for in the response from the end host. All of this default here should be perfectly fine for what we want to do. And if we want to add a tag, we could do that too. But we'll just do that. And then here under register targets, this is an optional step to create the target group. However, to ensure your load balancer routes traffic to this target, you must register your targets. We are going to do this a few steps later since we don't actually have any targets to add into that. So we're going to go create target group. And we see that we have this new one here. You see my old one that I had. It's not associated with anything. So we're going to go create target group. And we see that we have this new one here. You see my old one that I had. It's not associated with anything. So we're going to go create target group. And we see that we have this new one here. You see my old one that I had. It's not associated with anything. So we're going to go create target group. Okay, so we can go back here, we can refresh this. We should have the CyberInsight LB target group. Perfect. So listeners will be set up, HTTP port 80 going to this particular target group. So the next thing that we're going to do here is we want to create a launch template, and then that launch template we're going to tie back to use a particular Amazon machine image. So this will ensure that these EC2 instances are able to be spun up, and it's giving it the specific configurations of how we want those images to be spun up. So I think we're good here. We can go ahead, create the load balancer. Let's see. There we go. We're going to go under provisioning. So while this is doing that, we can go ahead and move on to the next thing, which is going to be creating a launch template. The launch template is going to be what the auto scaling group is going to use to actually spin up particular EC2 instances. So we're going to tie this to a particular Amazon machine image, and then a particular size of an image, so that makes sure that all of these different EC2 instances that are being spun up are the same, and then we're able to use the load balancer to spread the traffic across them. So the first thing that we're going to do here to create the launch template, we can just go under instances and launch template. We're going to go create launch template. We can call this CyberInsight LB test. So under launch template contents and the Amazon machine image, we're going to use this Amazon Linux 2. This is in the free tier. This should be perfectly fine. So we're going to go with that. Obviously, we have a whole bunch of different AMIs we can choose from, but we're going to go free. So we're going to do that. Instance type, we want to go the T2 micro. It's kind of our default in what we're using in most of these labs. If we had any key pair stuff, we could add that. We're not going to do that here. Subnet, we're not going to include in the launch template. Security groups, we could also do those as well. But let's just get to the point where we have this kind of ready to go. There's a whole bunch of other options we could dive into here, but we're just trying to make this super, super basic. So now we have that launch template there ready to go. So the next thing we're going to do is create an auto scaling group using the launch template. So if we go back over on the left hand side here, we go to auto scaling group, and we can go ahead and do this. So just I guess we could go back and take a quick look at what we're talking. So we're going to have a group. We're going to specify a minimum size, a desired capacity, and then a maximum size. And so it's going to try to keep the particular desired size in place. We're going to put some different thresholds there where if performance dips to a certain point, then that will end up scaling out another instance within the auto scaling group, of course limited by the maximum size. CyberInsight ASG test. Then we're going to pick the launch template that we just created. VPC that we're going to be putting it into, which is the default. Availability zones and subnets. Remember before we ended up going with 1A and 1B. Instance type requirement. This is what we already ended up dictating from within our launch template. We could override that if we wanted to. So we go next. Here we can attach a load balancer, and we're just going to attach our target group there. We can enable the health check. We could send the metrics to CloudWatch if we wanted to. All right, and here we get into the group size and scaling policies. Let's go desired capacity of 3, minimum capacity of 2, maximum capacity of 4. And then as far as the scaling policy, this is going to be what we're using. I was mentioning there was going to be a check to see, depending upon how the particular instances were performing, this would be what would kick off whether or not we end up scaling out in any way. So we can just go CyberInsight, LB, test, target tracking policy. The different options we have here, average CPU, we could go off of traffic coming in and out or actual requests. Let's go CPU. Let's do like 75%. Instance scale and protection. To protect from scale in is enabled. Newly launched instances will be protected from scale in by default. Okay, let's go next. Could do notifications if we wanted to do that as well. Let's go next. And tags. So launch template, instances, tying them back to a particular VPC and availability zones with the subnets, tying it back to the load balancer we created, health checks, then our scaling policy, desired 3, minimum 2, maximum 4. Okay, so now that scaling policy was created. So you can see here that we have 3 different hosts that are running and are starting to be initialized. We can just give them names. Let's go LB test 1. Will be test 2. Will be test. So what we want to do now that we see that these are up, let's see if the status checks on those are still initializing. That's fine. If we go to target groups and we go to the target group that we created, we see that these are registered and associated but unhealthy. So let's see why that might be. All right, so had to make a few changes real quick to get everything up and running. We were checking for the status of index.html file, and I needed to go and create that and make sure that the HTTP service was running on the different servers. So what I ended up doing in order to get that done was I created another EC2 instance, did my yum updates, got my service up and started, and then also made sure that I created an index.html file on the server itself. And then I took that and made a Amazon machine image, a AMI from that, and then went back into the specific launch configuration, so the launch template, and actually pointed to that AMI instead. So as you can see within here, different versions. If we got version 3, made some other changes as well, added a IAM role, added a key set in case I needed to SSH into it. And we see that here's my my AMI that I ended up creating. So if we go to the auto scaling group and we actually click into this, and this is the test template. You can see my key pair that I mentioned that I added, my AMI that I ended up doing there. So if we go back into the target groups, we can see that we have 2 instances that are up and working fine. The health check that we're doing, modified that so it's index.html. So if we actually go into one of these servers here, we're going to cd var www.html, and then I created this index.html. And you can see that since that's there, then I just had to make sure that the service was up and running. And you can see that the service is up and running. So I think that ended up getting us to the point where we now have healthy instances within the target group. Those are all linked back to the particular load balancer and the auto scaling group. So if something were to happen to one of those, then it would end up spinning up another instance, and then we should be good to go with all of that. And here we go. When I go to that web page, then we end up getting my HTML document, my index.html document thrown up there. This is an active page. All systems are up. All right, so just a quick recap of all the stuff that we covered. So we created a publicly accessible application load balancer. We ended up having a listener on there for port 80, and then also made sure that that application load balancer was in the correct VPC and 2 subnets within there for redundancy purposes. We created a new security group to allow HTTP port 80, TCP port 80 to the application load balancer. Then we created a target group. We set those to instance type so that any type of new EC2 instances in there could be part of that. Again, set a protocol to HTTP, did a health check, went with the default values on the health check, and had that end up going to a index.html that was hosted on the web server itself, or on all the different web servers. Then we created a launch template and ended up using a Amazon machine image. In the end, I ended up creating my own that had all of the web server stuff already there, ready to go. So did that. Then we created an auto scaling group using a launch template. The auto scaling group, again, was going to deploy to the 2 different availability zones that were in the VPC. And we set some type of threshold monitoring for the different instances within the ASG. I think we set that to 75% CPU utilization. Then we made sure that those new instances were registered with the ASG. And yeah, at that point, everything ended up linking up, getting green, because of the fact we made sure that that web service was running on those particular instances. And then I was able to go to the DNS address provided for the application load balancer and be able to pull up my HTML .index file. So I think that was, or I should say index.html file. I think that was pretty much it. We covered a whole bunch of different stuff there, kind of bringing together a few different technologies. Hopefully that was helpful for you. Keep an eye out. We're going to keep throwing out some of these AWS labs, more stuff on the networking side and some on the logging side and stuff like that. Make sure you smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, all that other good stuff. Go get at it, and we will talk soon. All right, bye.